Hi, Alexandra.
Hi, Valerie. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks so much for giving us some of your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. Why don't we start by getting to know you a little bit?
Okay.
Do you want to tell everybody your name, your first, last name, where you live, what you do?
Yeah, so my name's Alexandra Harbushka. I live in two places, actually. I live in Las Vegas and in San Diego. Currently, I'm recording this from Las Vegas. But what I do is I'm the founder of Life with Herpes, which is an online community for people living with both oral and genital herpes. And the reason why I created this and the reason why, you know, this is here is when I was diagnosed with herpes, genital herpes back in 2011, there was nothing out there. There was literally no support, no resources. It was just a trifold pamphlet. It was like, here you go. And it's such an emotional roller coaster when you're diagnosed. So I thought, gosh, if I could be of an assistance to some people when they are diagnosed and help them get off that roller coaster.
So that's like really bold of you because, just to put it lightly, there's a lot of stigma around any STIs or STDs. And herpes is one of those types that you live with forever. So, beyond just wanting to help people, which I think is very admirable, I feel like, I do a lot of activism myself in the fertility and women's healthcare field. What made you say, I'm okay with telling the world that I have herpes?
Well, I wasn't at first, obviously. I mean, that when I was first diagnosed, that was the last thing that was on my mind. And I thought, of course, I'm not going to tell anybody. I mean, why would I tell anybody I have this besides the people that I date that I would expose them to? But why? I mean, it's the stigma it's the stigma that wants to keep you locked up. It's the stigma that wants to keep you
Paralyzed.
Paralyzed with a glass ceiling, with whatever it is. And it's like this, it's like the big bad wolf almost, right? My best friend said to me, and I was about 6 weeks in after my diagnosis, and she said, you can either fight it or become a victim to it. And at the time, I was so crushed, so paralyzed, so shaken by it. I thought, what are you talking about? I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a researcher. I can't find a solution to this. It is what it is. And she just said, think about it. It'll happen when it happens, and you'll figure out a way to do it. Well, I completely forgot about it. Again, that was 2011. And it wasn't until 2017 that I actually spoke up about it. So it's very recent. And what happened was I was at a conference, a podcasting conference, and I was asked to speak on self-love. And so I wrote my speech and I practiced in front of my husband, and he's like, well, that's lame. It needs to be, a little beefier. Like, come on, you should tell that you have herpes. That's a real story about self-love. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to mention that I have herpes at a conference in front of all these. I mean, there's just no way that's going to happen. Well, lo and behold, I did. And when I did it, I realized three things happened. One, more than three things, but the audience stood still and they cried. Like I had a hard time sharing it. And so they were connected and they felt that. Two, people came up to me and saying, I have it too. Thank you for sharing. I've never told anybody. Or three, people came up to me and said, I don't have herpes, but I have something of my own. Mm-hmm. Whatever their story is, whatever their herpes is. So when I realized that, I realized, wow, this is a really powerful message that nobody's talking about, yet 2/3 of the population have HSV1 and 1/6 of the population have HSV2. Like, come on, we got to talk about it.
Right.
So, and the way our sex education is now, we're not, it really should be taught, instead of like, don't do this and don't do that, and you don't want to get an STI. And it should be like, hey, if you're going to have sex, you are going to pick up something along the way. It's just, it's inevitable. I like to use the comparison as, if you go into the office during the holidays, you're going to get the flu. Like, you just can't avoid it. Everybody has the flu during the holidays in every office, right? Like, you just can't avoid it. You're going to get it. So you may not get it every year, but you're going to pick it up. So same thing, you're going to pick up something just because we're living life, and viruses, bacteria infections are spread, skin to skin and human to human, and enjoying life and doing things that we naturally do. So the message should really be altered.
I agree. I can't compound any more than what you've said, except for that sex education is really lacking, and sex education in the aspect of understanding your body and when and what happens when you do certain things, instead of it all being hush hush and underneath the curtain, or behind the curtain and below the rug and all those good things. It should be discussed very openly, but instead we have this stigma and we have this shame and we have this like hush hushness about privacy, and instead it's keeping people from being safe because of these secrets, and so that's a real shame. Can I ask about your diagnosis? Was there something that led you to believe like, oh, you need to go to the doctor and get checked, or were you getting checked on a regular basis?
Yeah, what was really interesting is I came down with, I wasn't feeling right on Sunday. It was the Sunday, so the Sunday before 4th of July, I wasn't feeling right, but I had my annual either that Tuesday or that Wednesday or something. So I just thought, well, I'll just wait till Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm going in anyways, so I don't need to go Monday. I just assumed it was a yeast infection, because at that point in my life, I had them like every 2 minutes, basically. Like, I got rid of one, I got a new one. I couldn't get rid of the yeast infection. So I just assumed it was that. There's no way that it was going to be herpes, because I had this idea built up in my head that I would never get it.
Yeah.
Just like every other person that has herpes, they're never like, well, it would never happen to me. It's not me. We're invincible. We don't think STDs, STIs happen to us. It happens to somebody else.
Right.
And we have this picture in our mind of who that other person is. It's not us. But the truth is, it's everybody.
Right. So how did this affect your dating? Because I know you speak a lot about having a positive mindset throughout a diagnosis that's of this kind. And so how did this affect dating, and how did you meet your husband? And give us a little bit of your fertility journey today.
Okay, so I stayed with the guy that gave me herpes for 2 years. I was extremely low self-esteem. I thought nobody's going to love me. Nobody's ever going to want to date me.
So you know who the partner was?
Yeah.
And that partner never shared with you that they did not know?
He says he does not know, or did not know. So I don't know. You never know.
But he went and got tested after you got tested, and then you both found out you have it?
Yeah, so he went and got tested after. So I was tested right before we were together, and I had a negative test. And then, a couple weeks later, I ended up getting herpes, or a month later, or whenever it was, ended up getting genital herpes. And then he got tested, and he had it as well. So again, I don't know.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, but my self-esteem was, I'll talk on that really quick. The typical incubation period for genital herpes in general, not genital or oral, it doesn't matter. It's really the same thing, but it's 2 to 14 days. So it's about 2 weeks for the majority amount of time. So typically if you have a new partner and you've been with them for about 2 weeks and you're like, oh, something doesn't feel right, that's usually what it is. Now, it can lie dormant in your system for months, years, and show up at any time. But just FYI, it's usually about within 2 weeks. And then I thought, okay, I was turning 30 at this point, and I thought, all right, he's not the one. I just need to go out and date and have fun. I need to enjoy. I need to just date everybody. And so I also want to say that the definition of dating doesn't mean sleeping together.
Right.
I think that gets really confused, especially in the millennial generation, dating means I have to sleep with this person. That's just what we do. So that's a myth that you can decide.
I'm really glad you clarified that, because it's true. Dating means something different to the younger generation right now than it does maybe a Gen X or a Gen Y, or it's millennials are looking at dating like hookups, and other individuals may define dating as, I'm courting you, I'm going out with you, I'm seeing if there's a connection, and then maybe some physical stuff might happen, but it doesn't always mean sex.
Right. Like you want to even see if you're connected to this person. Do you like this person? Sex is awesome, don't get me wrong. And if you're okay with the outcome of I don't know this person, and that's okay, and I could potentially pick up an STI from this, or there could potentially be a pregnancy because of this. Like, if you're okay with that, then great. If you're not, and there's a little bit of hesitation there, or worry or fear, then it's probably not the right thing for you at that time. But I basically dated everybody, anybody. I had fun. I went out. I went to yoga. I went for ice cream. I went for walks on the beach. I went to dinners. I had fun. And there were times I'd use the I have herpes as an excuse to get out of sex. That's something I've been criticized for by people, like a lot of men, saying, well, that's not fair, you're just leading guys on. But I was just seeing if I liked them, and it was a low-hanging fruit scapegoat. It was like, okay, well, I have herpes, I'm not really that into you, I'm just going to use herpes as a reason to not
to turn
I don't want to tell you I'm not that into you.
To turn you down.
I just rather tell you. Yeah, it was easier.
What was often the response once you said you had herpes?
Sometimes I wouldn't hear from them again, which was fine. But then other times I was like, man, you're still here. Like, darn, like, I don't really like you that much.
But did you ever get I have herpes 2 back, or never?
No.
Did you ever ask?
But I didn't tell everybody, because there were people that just, you go on a date, and then you go on a second date, and then you both it just fizzles. Like, you're not, both of you aren't to each other. So,
right.
I either got the, okay, thanks, I'm not interested, politely, or, okay, I don't care, great.
And did you ever have the discussion of getting tested together, or when's the last time they got tested? Or was that just always kind of a moot point?
So, since being diagnosed, I've had 2 sexual relationships. One was an ex-boyfriend of, I think, 2 years. I can't remember. And then my husband. So, again, it really wasn't a thing. So,
right.
So when it became something serious, then that's when those conversations happened. And that was that next point. But to me, sex wasn't casual. Mm-hmm. It wasn't casual before I had herpes. Yeah. And it wasn't casual after. But that's just my personal choice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just even being able to talk about your sexual activity is a huge thing, because I think immediately when you hear an STI or an STD, you think, oh, you must be just having lots of sex. And that's not actually true. You just slept with the wrong person, or someone that didn't know their status. Because most people do not test. So only 12% of the population even gets tested on a regular basis. And men are a huge component of not getting tested, because they don't have yearly exams like women are required to do to get our birth control, or to, if we have women healthcare issues down there, we often go to the doctor first thing, because that's what you do to get it treated. Or, like if you have tons of yeast infections or UTIs, you see your doctor. So I feel like men aren't getting tested as much, and so that doesn't help, because that's 50% of the population that are having sexual activity that could spread it to another person. And often women are the hosts, because men are the deliverers. And in a heterosexual relationship, it's an unfair balance. of what's happening.
Right.
So, yeah, go ahead.
And to add on that, we're not testing for herpes in the STD, STI panel. So when you go in being a responsible sexually active adult and tell your doctor, health practitioner, whatever, whoever they are, and say, hey, I'd like to be tested for
STD panel, you have to specifically ask for your blood to be drawn for herpes.
Correct.
Yep. It's just like HIV. You're not always tested for HIV. And you have to specifically request and consent to have your blood drawn for that test.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the other thing as well that is a myth, I guess, or just lack of education is cold sores, which is herpes, typically HSV1, that is also sexually transmitted. So there's majority of the population with oral herpes, aka cold sores, fever, blisters, whatever you want to call them, that don't realize that that is an STD or STI. Mm-hmm. And they are transmitting that sexually via oral sex. So that's a huge...
So HSV turns into HSV2.
No, it will remain HSV1. It doesn't... So there's HSV1 and HSV2. HSV1 is typically oral, and HSV2 is typically genital. However, they don't really care where they go if you give it a location to go. Mm-hmm. So what's happening now is because the recent generations have not been exposed to herpes as children. So, like our grandparents, parents, they all picked it up as kids because they were kissed by an adult that had it or a grandparent or whatever. We've done a really good job of protecting our youth from it now. So now we're getting it, the next generation, we're getting it genitally opposed to orally. So there's a huge, huge influx of people having oral herpes, but they have it down there.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I'm glad you brought up those points. I mean, I think this is a very deep topic and has a lot of layers. And a lot of times people are afraid to ask these questions, or they don't even know the questions to ask. So It's great that you're sharing your knowledge and that you're helping normalize it, bring some consistency to the education platform about it, and that we're not shaming or blaming, but just helping people protect themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You're going to be exposed to it regardless. If you're dating someone with herpes or sleeping with someone with herpes, you're still going to be exposed to it in your life because it's so common. You're going to pick up a beer at a bar from a friend that has it. You're going to, share a bite of a sandwich or a piece of pizza or whatever, or share a lipstick or a lip gloss, whatever. You're going to come in contact with it, period, the end. And that's why it's so frustrating for me as an advocate to hear that you're a bad person because it's sexually transmitted. Sharing a lipstick doesn't make you a bad person, right? Or sharing a beer with a friend at a baseball game doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means you didn't know.
Right. Well, I think we can put some silver lining on this, that there's some new research that are currently happening. I sent you the links to that. I don't know if you got a chance to see it, but I was actually part of a clinical study that possibly has created a vaccination.
That's amazing.
And we'll see where it goes, and hopefully they can get funding and move it further down the pike to get approved, just like HPV. I mean, we could throw in there human papillomavirus. I mean, almost everybody has some form of HPV. I mean, even my own mother probably has HPV, and she's only been with my father. So, there's 100 different strands. And there's 4 major strands that cause cancer. And so now the Gardasil shot has been approved and extended for individuals past up to the age of 45, when before the age was 26. So they just found that the research has allowed them to extend the time period in which they are able to get the 3 series shot, and why it's so important for teenagers or young adults in their early preteens to get these shots before they even become sexually active, to give them that guard, that protection, that virus protection. And so a lot of people don't know that even if you have one of the strands, like for example, warts is one of the HPV strands, that you can still get the Gardasil shot and protect yourself from the 3 other major strands or even protect you from the other 100 that are out there. So I think, hopefully herpes will go down that track and be able to
Right.
have a same outcome as HPV, and that would eliminate or eradicate it over time. So no one has to suffer from this. But that'd be great. But that's in the future, so we don't know yet.
Right. Absolutely.
But let's go back.
We'll see what happens. I mean,
yeah. Let's go back. Okay, so you had a dating partner and then broke it off with that individual, and then you met your husband. Tell us a little bit about that story and that journey.
Yeah, so I actually knew my husband before I was diagnosed with herpes, and we were colleagues, so we worked together. So I told him the day I found out I had herpes, because I went back into the office and I was devastated. And so he looked at me and said, "What's wrong?" So he knew then. Now there was no romantic, there was nothing going on. We were, colleagues. So fast forward however many years later it was, I don't know, 2011 to 2000. I think we got together in 2014. Could be 2015. I can't really remember. And I brought it up to him again. I was like, "Hey, you do remember I have genital herpes and oral herpes to me, and just how does it affect me?" And that's a really big key thing to remember when you are telling a partner about your herpes diagnosis or for whatever it is. It's no longer about you and your story. It's how it affects them. So we talked about it, and he goes, "Okay, great. Like, thanks for sharing. And I love you and want to be with you. And it doesn't matter." So, our relationship, it's never been an issue. It's never been, any sort of thing. And because it's nothing. It's a skin rash. And for somebody to not love somebody or not want to be with somebody or because of a skin rash, it's like saying, "I don't want to be with you because you have a bad zit." Okay. Like, it's silly as that, right? So for our particular relationship, it's never been an issue. I do bring up, there are a lot of times that you will get in some relationships, people will use the herpes as like a carrot. So you'll get people saying, "Well, I'm the only one that will be with you because nobody else will love you because you have herpes, but I love you. I'll be with you, but nobody else will be with you." So I do mention that to people and look at that. Like, if you ever feel that way, I ask you to take a step back and look at that, because I hear that a lot from the members in our community, especially the younger members, just because we're at that point in our life, we are new to dating. I don't blame either side. It's just be careful of that. Just be aware of that. But yeah, with my husband, it was not an issue whatsoever. It was thrilled. So we've been together 5 years and, over 5 years, and he does not have herpes. I've never transmitted it. And yeah.
So how did you feel about motherhood and children and your future on those fronts? Did you
with
ever...
herpes?
Well, yeah. Did you ever have a conversation with your doctor what that landscape looks like?
Yeah. So when I was initially diagnosed, I did ask, will I be able to have children? Can I deliver? I mean, how does this work? And they said, "Oh, absolutely. It's not a problem whatsoever. There's so many women with it. It's just being cautious the last couple weeks of your pregnancy. And you just need to be in communication with whoever your doctor is and just be in communication with them and get a plan together. But it will not affect your pregnancy whatsoever." So herpes does not affect fertility. It does not affect your pregnancy. It does not affect your unborn child. The only thing that it affects is the potential of delivery. So during delivery, if you do not have an outbreak and you are on the antiviral, you have less than 1% chance of transmitting herpes. So it's a very low percentage. It's a very safe percentage. Now, if you have an outbreak,
manageable.
Yeah, it's very manageable. If you do have an outbreak, that's another story.
Then C-section usually is the path that happens.
Right. And there's many reasons for C-sections. So don't feel like, "Oh, the reason why I had a C-section is because I had herpes and everyone's going to know that." No, there's many reasons.
Right. So Do you want to tell everyone the
Yeah.
good news?
So yes. So right now, today, I am 19 weeks pregnant. So my husband and I are ecstatic, and it was a journey. It was about a 2-year journey to get pregnant. Had nothing to do with herpes. Part of it was just making sure your body's ready, and blood tests and multivitamins. And along that journey, I had hypothyroidism, which, if you're not familiar with it, it's basically when your thyroid just decides to take a hike. And if your thyroid's off, you won't conceive. And if you do conceive, it's very challenging to keep a pregnancy. So I had to get that under control. We worked on it for about 6 months, just having a fun time. And then we realized we needed to go to IVF. So we went through IVF, and I found it absolutely fascinating. Because again, we know how not to get pregnant. We know a lot about birth control, but we know nothing about, like, how do you get pregnant? I mean, I know that the egg and sperm have to meet, and it has to be within a certain number of hours and all that, but I don't know anything else about it, right? So it's a absolute amazing educational journey to go through IVF. I looked at it as a very positive thing. I enjoyed it. I felt so blessed to have the opportunity to do this. I know there's a lot of women that feel, and I could walk into the fertility clinic and I could feel the other women feeling that like they weren't feminine enough, or they
like their body failed them.
Their bodies failed them. They weren't able to do this. There was something wrong with them. And that's not it at all. It's either your age, which is just the way that time works, or it was just you and your partner. It didn't work. Like it just, it could be your partner, it could be you. There's so many reasons, and it's not.
So how old were you when you went through fertility treatments?
I started it at 35, and I conceived at 36. So I went through one egg retrieval, and I was 35. Again, I enjoyed it. I thought it was fascinating. I mean, I didn't enjoy giving myself shots every night. But again, it was such an interesting process to watch your body change, and the hormones, and see and feel. And even the egg retrieval, it was interesting to me. I mean, yeah, I went under the knife and had surgery.
Well, it's not really a literal knife. It's more like a light anesthesia and a needle that pulls out your eggs. But yeah.
You know, you're under
anesthesia.
So you're under anesthesia. So you do go under, and that's hard on your body. You know, you don't want to put anybody under. But that was interesting to see, you know, watch your follicles grow and them count, and different drugs and switching it around, and today your follicles are at blah, 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 and, you know, counting, and then to see how many eggs you actually are retrieved and how many of them fertilized, and then how many of them make it to the blastocyst phase. And we opted to do the genetic DNA testing on our embryos. And then that's interesting to get that back and hear what an abnormal and normal, a mosaic, I mean, all of it is just absolutely fascinating. And again, I felt blessed and honored to have that at our fingertips.
How many eggs did you get?
I think the first time we got 7, I think 5 fertilized, 3 made it to blastocyst. And of the 3 that made it to blastocyst, 1 came back normal. So that's very interesting to say, like 7, because I heard 7, I was like, whoa, that's like 7 kids. That's like a football team. I don't need 7. It's great. And so, but
it's a numbers game. Yeah. It's a numbers game. So then you did it a second time?
Well, we were on our way to our transfer. So we were ready to go. Everything was, my uterine lining was nice and thick, all ready to go. And we're getting in the car on our way to the fertility clinic, and we get a phone call from them saying that the embryo did not thaw.
Oh, no.
And yeah.
Heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking. It's not a physical miscarriage that I went through, but it's an emotional loss. It's a loss. Because you are already connected to these little embryos, because you've gone on this journey with them, and you know about them, you know their sex, you know their chromosome, like, you know things about them. And you could also tell the fertility clinic, they were amazing. Amazing experience with them. And they were so well rehearsed in everything that they did, except this phone call, they didn't know how to make it. So my point in saying that is it doesn't happen. They said less than 5% chance that this ever happens.
Rare.
And in their clinic, it doesn't happen. Like, it just doesn't.
Yeah,
so they literally,
it's so rare.
Yeah.
And of course, it had to happen to you. Like, oh my God, sob story. What did you do when you heard that news?
Well, I was emotional. I wanted to be emotional, but I knew I couldn't be because I had to opposed to cry or opposed to, like, be sad about it. I had to digest it. We did have a mosaic embryo, which, in case you don't know, the listeners don't know what that means. It means that there is a chance. It's not normal. It's not abnormal. There's a chance that the embryo would be a perfectly healthy little baby. So we had an hour to make a decision if we wanted to take that mosaic. And so we met with a gene specialist. I don't know, embryologist, genetic specialist, and she went over every chromosome it was a little girl, with that little girl, and basically it came down to a 30% chance that she would be healthy. And we just thought the reason why we did the genetic testing was to know, and that percent wasn't high enough. So we decided to wait, but we had an hour. I mean, it's like an hour of a life-changing decision. Saying, okay, we'll take her. She may not work. It may not implant. She may not go to the next, her cells may not divide, or we take her and we may not have a healthy child. So that's a really big life-altering decision to make in an hour.
Well, and all the meds you took up to this point to get your uterine lining ready and primed and like that too. Like it's emotional on all fronts.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine what it's like also to go through that adoption phase and hear that you have been a match and you have a little baby to take home, and then all of a sudden the mother says, you know what, I want to keep the child. Like it's the same thing.
Yeah,
right?
It's like, the same feeling.
It's taken away, and this isn't how it's supposed to be.
Right. So what did you do next?
So I had to wait for a period, which of course it was like.
So you decided not to transfer the embryo.
Not to transfer the embryo, keep her frozen. And they said that there could be more research down the line, but we decided at this point there wasn't enough.
Good things in the favor to do the implantation.
Right, which also isn't fair to a child either, right? Like, yeah. So we had to get a period and start the whole process over again and get more eggs. And it's really interesting watching your body, because the first time I went through the egg retrieval, my eggs loved the drugs. They were like, ooh, this is fun. Like, I'm going to get big as fast as possible. And then moving forward, second time, my ovaries were like, I'm going to think about this. I don't know if I really want to get bigger right now. I'm just going to think about it. So it took longer to actually get to the place where they could do the egg retrieval.
Right. So you had to take drugs for longer than 10 days? Was it like closer to 14 days?
Yeah, it was more like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which was interesting.
Yeah.
And of that, I had 12 follicles that were great, and I only got 3 eggs.
Wow.
So again, and then you go, okay, well, how many of them are going to fertilize, and how many of them are going to make it to blastocyst, and how many of them are going to come back positive?
Yeah.
So it was the same story. We ended up with 3. 3 went off for the testing. The 3 came back. 2 were abnormal, and only 1 was normal.
Wow.
So we said, what's that one?
So you implanted that one, and that's baby in your belly now.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Congratulations. What a story. And so it's a boy or a girl?
We do. It's a boy.
Oh.
It's a boy. So we're thrilled. Like we're just so exciting. So excited. And it's very, again, going through the IVF cycle, you're already connected to this child
in a different way. Yeah.
Yeah, because you have to make decisions. I'm not sure if other fertility clinics do it, but if I were to die, who gets the embryos? Does my husband? If my husband were to die, who gets them? If we're both to die, where do they go?
Same thing as if you split. If you split,
yeah.
What happens to these embryos? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like, so you're already making choices for these little humans that are not humans yet. And that's everything. Like, they're your children, right? It's I never thought I'd think of it that way, but they are your children.
Yeah.
And whether they're normal, mosaic, normal, they're still your children.
Yeah, their first babysitter was just an embryologist.
Right. So you're really connected. And then, of course, being pregnant is the most magical, mystical, just godly moment. I just can't describe it any other way. I mean, it's truly a miracle to be able to know that there is a human, there's your child is inside of you, and it's through the mom and the dad and your love and your connection, and that grows this child. And I truly believe, with all the science and technology that we went through to conceive, it was never up to me. It was never up to the embryologist. It was never up to any of it. It's truly,
it was a God thing.
It is. It's
science.
And we just, it's science. Yeah, it's not science. It's just truly, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. That's it. I can't describe it any other way.
Yeah. Well, it's so exciting. I'm so happy for you. And it's just been really great following you online and watching your story as it unfolds. I mean, you've been dealt a lot of cards and you've used them in such a positive way. So your light is helping others, and I'm just really proud of you.
Thank you. Yeah. Just don't let, whether it's herpes or if it's infertility or what, there is another answer, there's another direction, there's another path, and whatever your story is that's holding you back, just know that other people have a very similar story, and it's truly up to you to decide how you want that journey to go, and don't let it hold you back. It's easier said than done, I know, but don't let it hold you back.
Right. It's great advice. So when are you due?
I'm due Valentine's Day.
Oh, that's so great. 2020 Valentine's Day, eh?
Yes.
Lovely.
Yes.
Awesome. And the baby room, you already putting together the baby room?
I went to the Home Depot and got some paint samples this weekend. So, and I asked my husband to paint the wall, but that hasn't happened yet. So we're starting.
Yeah, it's exciting. Well, thanks so much, Alexandra. This has been fun getting to know you, and we'll put all of your details and how anyone can reach you if they want to learn more about your activism and your website, and to help with any STI planning choices and decisions and compromising things that they got to work through. And thanks for your time today. This has been
You're
great.
welcome. Thanks for having me. And of course, anything I can ever do to, support anybody with herpes, fertility, all that.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.